Episode 1, Coast to Coast, Kevin Bunk, Gabe Zoda coming to you. This will be the replacement on a weekly basis for the Burrows. Of course, you know Gabe from The Playbook, one of BTO Media's most successful, most enjoyed social media platforms, The Playbook with Gabe Zoda. So go check that out if you haven't, but I'd be surprised if you were watching us and didn't know about The Playbook. So this is going to be all NBA, but Coast to Coast focuses a lot on the Knicks and the Lakers, which is where we'll start every episode. Gabe, first, just want to ask how you're doing, man. Been a while.
I'm doing great. Happy to finally be live on a show. I was doing all the Zoda rants early on in the Burrows. You guys said, this guy sucks. Let's get this segment out of here. Now I'm in the flesh here. I'm actually super excited. I haven't been this excited to really be a part of something basketball related. The last time I was this excited was when the Liberty won a championship, which, tells you where the bar is kind of at.
Yeah, bar is high because of the Liberty Championship.
Yes, of course.
Very high. So I want to start New York basketball here. Knicks 3-4. Another bad loss last night. But I do think these first two teams we're going to get into, Knicks and Lakers, every episode, not in a certain order of Knicks first, but just depending on what's going on. But I do think these two teams have a lot of similarities to start this season that we'll get into. But last night you texted me because I had sent you a text that it was just, another pathetic loss. Really disappointing closing effort. Tom Thibodeau said the same thing. Bad closing effort by the Knicks last night. Bad closing effort in Monday night's game as well. But you said there's a valid reason for it. And we didn't elaborate intentionally because we wanted to talk about it here. So I'm excited to hear your reasoning for another bad Knicks closeout.
We keep it simple. It's the chemistry on the team. When you have a guy in Jalen Brunson who, first of all, isn't performing well, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But you have a guy in them and then that team, they're just not used to closing out games with each other. I think that's super important. You have a guy in Cat who, yes, took a secondary role to Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, but now is playing with an entirely different style of player. So he needs to learn his spots and where to go. Jalen Brunson, he never had a three-point shooting guy like Cat to really play with. So now you have to learn how to play with that. There was this one play clip that went viral, and it was Jalen Brunson going into the lane off the left wing, and Cat was just standing there wide open behind him. Well, they overblown that to the smithereens because, yeah, Jalen Brunson, he had Mitch Robb setting screens last year. He wasn't hitting a three-point shot. Now you have Cat. He can do that without hesitation. That'll get smoothened out, and I think we're seeing that chemistry problem being bid with both the defense and closing out games. I think people are overstating this. I saw ESPN saying they had one of the worst off seasons ever. I think that's the dumbest thing in the world. I mean, this Knicks team is good, but they need to learn how to play with each other.
And people have knocked the chemistry, saying the Knicks ruined the vibes. The Knicks ruined what they had last year in the Towns trade specifically. But I have no regrets about the Towns trade through 7 games. You're not missing Randall here. Karl Anthony Towns is so much better offensively than Julius Randle is for this Knicks team. And I don't want to use that to knock Randall, but Towns is just a better scorer, man. And it's not a crazy statement. He's a better scorer. He's the best scoring big I've ever seen in New York basketball. I mean, this guy is really a legit scoring big, but Brunson, to your point, has been too ball dominant. So he does have to learn that, middle ground now where you have a great corner catch and shoot guy in Bridges, who we'll talk about. You have a big who can shoot from anywhere on the floor. I mean, he could shoot from 5 feet beyond the arc. We all know that. So you have to get adjusted to this pick and pop game where you're right. It's always been pick and roll, but I want to go, before we go to Bridges, this Knicks bench here. Are you worried at all because you're getting a little bit of a mixed bag, and the bag is either a good one or a bad one based on how Deuce McBride performs off the bench, not getting much else, Mitchell Robinson hurt, Precious Achiuwa not playing. What do you think about this Knicks bench so far? Is that a reason to be upset about the offseason because they didn't add enough depth?
Well, I don't know what else they could have added. People are saying, oh, they should have added this. They should have added. There's not much you really could have added else to this team that would have made it much better. And the big reason why is because of Tom Thibodeau. He doesn't play a long bench. He plays 3 guys, maybe 4 maximum. So that's a big problem in of itself, because when you have guys like Precious Achiuwa, you have Mitch Robb, you have guys like Cam Payne who are all out because of injury, then guess what? Your bench becomes Pacomi Dadier and and you have other guys that Kolek has to play meaningful minutes. And I love Kolek. I'm the biggest defender. We'll talk about it throughout the season, but he shouldn't be playing right now. And you're forcing Deuce McBride to try to be this spark plug, which he's doing a great job, but he has to do too much right now. I think it's a big mistake right now to be playing such a short bench, especially with the quality of players they have left. But even then, I mean, that's always been the thing with Tom Thibodeau. He doesn't play rookies. Like, why is Jericho Sims playing any minutes?
Jericho Sims sucks, dude. I wanted to get to him. He stinks.
Yeah.
He shouldn't even be on the team.
No, I mean, that is a guy. I mean, we could pull up the Stephen A. Smith clip. He can't play. What was it? Kwame Brown. He can't play. He can't catch the ball. He sucks. He isn't good at all. And you have a guy in Huck Porty who's behind him who shows that he can play better. He shows more effort. He's better in the pick and roll. It just makes no sense why Jericho Sims would be playing literally any minutes over Huck Porty right now.
Sims is definitely one of those guys who pops in practice, I think, because he's got such an athletic build and vertical, but we all know practice to game in professional sports or in any sports is just a totally different atmosphere, different world. He literally, I don't trust him to catch the ball. I don't trust him to pass. I don't trust him. He doesn't play good defense. He doesn't have a good feel for the defensive end of the floor. He just doesn't seem to be confident in his game. So Huck Porty, to your point, he should just be playing because he can't be worse. You know, this is a bad NBA player in Sims. This is a G League center, and you have a guy that can definitely perform as well, maybe a little better, so he should be playing. But let me lay this out for you. I know that Robinson's not back until probably January, so I'm not going to say this as a Knicks are totally fine, don't worry about it, because if they don't get better, they're going to be in a hole. I also will say right now, I'm not worried about the Knicks until game 25. If they stink at game 25, I'll start to get a little concerned. But through 7 here, not going to get worried. But you're starting 5 when Robinson and Achua are back. It's Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, Robinson, probably. And then you have the 3 off the bench, because Thibs is not going to go more than 3 guys off the bench, usually not more than 2, is Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, Precious Achua. So right there, just getting those 2 guys back, you feel great about your team. You really feel excellent about the 3 guys off the bench. And then you have the opportunity at the trade deadline to add another guy if you have to. So I don't think the Knicks do have this depth issue, which I think we'd agree on after what you said. They don't have a problem with the bench here. They just need to figure it out while they go before they get healthy.
Yeah, I fully agree. And probably the best case scenario for the trade deadline, honestly, without what you just laid out, is if Huck Porty plays and he plays well, can be that glue guy, that guy that's not going to be a net negative, but at least be a net neutral at all times, then guess what? You have Mitch Rob that you could probably trade at the trade deadline to get some more depth. That's a real, very real scenario for the New York Knicks, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But you look at this team, and this is kind of one of the biggest points I want to talk about with the Knicks, is that they're playing so slow right now. Yeah. And especially with the Julius Randle trade, that was the biggest knocks on Julius Randle, is that he clogged up the offense. Well, now you have Cat, who doesn't clog up the offense as much. And guess what? They're still playing at such a slow pace. So that, to me, is more proof that once you get more used to things will start moving quicker. Once you start getting these players back to add that depth, you'll get the energy, you'll get the familiarity, and then guess what? You'll have a faster-paced team that's playing a lot better basketball, and there's no reason to be worried about this Knicks team. Yes, there are some problems. We could talk about defense. We could talk about their interior, lack of interior, really strength at the rim and at rebounding, but I think really this team just needs to get used to playing with each other and get some players back.
Here's my one real concern that I'm not totally into yet, but I do think could be the real one. You know, we have a couple that we're laying out here. This is the one that I won't be surprised in 30, 40 games if we're still saying it and making it real. Mikal Bridges' role on the team.
Okay.
It feels like I watched him in Brooklyn. I didn't not watch him. I know he wasn't an elite defender, as many suggested. I understood that. You knew that too. Coming into it, he's not an elite defender. He's not bad. He's not terrible, but you're not really gaining anything from his defense. Now, offensively, he's too good in Brooklyn to think that this is his max offensive role with the Knicks. They're basically just plugging him into the corner here and a little bit on the wing to catch and shoot. That should not be his role. He should be a guy that gives Brunson the breather in the second quarter, third quarter, and late in the game in fourth quarter sometimes. And he runs the ISO. He runs the offense from the wing. And I'm not seeing that, but I have to imagine Leon Rose and the coaching staff imagined him to do what I want him to do when you give up 6 first-round picks and players for the guy. So I'm not going to go crazy on this yet, but I could see this being a problem in late December.
Well, take a look at the games in which Mikal Bridges has done well, right? Let's look at the 21-point game against the Pacers. What was he doing? He wasn't sitting in the corner. He was attacking the elbows, attacking that middle range area, and he was dominant in that area. He was getting on the movement, the back cuts. We saw one back cut at the end of the game last night, but that's where Mikal Bridges can really find his role well. And once again, it goes back to this familiarity. Once that happens, I think you'll be much more active. Him standing in the corner, you just laid it out, is not a recipe for success for this Knicks team. Him being more active in the mid-range, getting those post looks and getting more of those cuts, that's where he'll have most of that success. And with Mikal Bridges, I mean, I still can't believe people think he was a bad shooter. I had a little worries going into the season. But this is a career 38% three-point shooter. And now you look at his numbers, and guess what he's shooting from three? 38%. So let's chill on he can't shoot. Let's get him a little bit more active in the mid-range area, and that'll be perfect for his role. A little bit about his defense, though. I mean, you said not a great defender. Yeah, he's not the biggest lockdown guy. He's not a first-team all-defender. No one's making that argument. But I thought the biggest argument from him moving from Brooklyn to New York is that he doesn't have to use as much energy on that defensive end as he had to do, or on the offensive end as he had to do in Brooklyn. So maybe that matched up, get him a little bit more energetic on the defensive end, and we could see more of like a Suns defensive Mikal Bridges kind of deal. Haven't seen that just yet from him, but I think I'm still holding out a little bit of faith that he could be better defensively as the season gets on.
All right, Knicks, I think that the overall consensus here is don't worry about them yet. I get the frustration early. I have the frustration early as a Knicks fan, but don't get worried. Don't think that this is not a good basketball team or a very good basketball team until maybe a month from today. If they're still hovering around 500, a game or two under 500, then you can worry a little bit. I remember last year, my closing thought on the Knicks for today is just before December 1st, they were middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. Tom Thibodeau changes the rotations. He starts adding a couple minutes to the guys on the bench. Deuce McBride got a much larger role. He starts taking a few minutes from some of the starters who weren't performing at the highest level. And the Knicks end up being the second best team in the Eastern Conference from December 1st till the season ended. So give it some time. This stuff works itself out. They have too many good players to lose, Gabe, and they have too good of a coach to be a losing team. Anything else you got for the Knicks today?
That's it for the Knicks. I mean, this is a team right now. They're going on a little bit of I think they had a road trip coming back home. I think you'll start to see the gears moving properly now. And you know, I hate listening to Knicks fans sometimes. I think sometimes we call them the smartest fans in the sport. I think sometimes they're the dumbest fans in the sport.
Yes.
Because they expect things to happen immediately. That's not how basketball works. We'll talk about two amazing teams in a bit with the Celtics and the Cavs. What do they have? They've been the same team for 4 or 5 years, and they're a talented team. That's what wins you in this league. It doesn't happen immediately, so we'll see what happens.
All right, let's go to the Lakers here. 4-4 start. I have to address the elephant in the room of last night is J.J. Redick storming out of the press conference. I am sure you saw the entire context of this situation. Yes. I did not. I only saw the whatever 10-second compressed clip of Redick. Your thoughts and breakdown of Redick's antics last night?
I mean, he was annoyed. Finally, the Lakers have a guy who cares at head coach. Why are fans saying, oh, this is bad on J.J. Redick, he looks bad? Finally, the Lakers have somebody who looks like they care up at the podium. This guy actually gets sleepless nights going over film, going over strategy. Yes, he's a new coach. He's still learning the role of how to be an NBA head coach. We all knew that was going to be a growing pain throughout the season. But what are you seeing? He's going even when he's at a car wash. He's getting the film in. He's going insane at nights to make sure his team is the most prepared team every night. Is that true every night? No. But you are seeing a guy at the front who cares, and that always trickles down to the players on the team. He showed some accountability for D'Angelo Russell, benching him practically for the second half and saying, hey, you're not playing at the level that we need you to play if we want to win. So we're going to get somebody else who might show that effort. That's a head coach that you want on a championship level team. I love that he stormed out. And I think people that are ridiculing that have no idea of what it takes and the passion it takes to be an NBA head coach.
I'm glad you went there, because my first thought this morning when I saw it was, I cannot remember a time where Darvin Ham was visibly pissed off after a loss, which is not a good thing. If you're a coach that's never absolutely distraught after losing games, and here's Redick now showing a lot of urgency 8 games. And I think one thing you have to realize when you take the job to coach this Lakers team is your window is very small with the group. That is a negative to taking this job. You don't, how many years left do you have of LeBron? You have at least, I think, 2. You know, you can't guarantee anything beyond next year. You really can't guarantee beyond this year. You don't know what happens. Yeah. But with the small window of LeBron, with Anthony Davis, who is not as injury prone as everyone says, but now getting later into his career, you never know what happens with his health, with his deterioration. And he's so great right now. We'll talk about him in a minute. But you have such a small window. So to show the urgency after 8 games, after a 1-4 run since starting 3-0, that's a good sign for me. Now, did I think he could have handled it better than just walking out? Always. But it's, once again, he didn't walk out of a press conference in the Western Conference Final. He walked out of a press conference in Game 8. So I'm not going to sit here and bash JJ Redick, who I actually think has done a pretty nice job. And I want to go to the roster here. Do you think this roster is great enough for us to, you know, I can't sit here and knock Redick if they sit around 500 for a little while, because after 3 or 4 guys, I don't feel great about the Lakers right now. Once again, we have the deadline later on. You have a lot of ways to improve your team. You don't know what Dalton Connect's going to be 2 months from now. So I'm not going to push the panic button on anyone's roster here, but I don't know if this team is good enough for Redick to completely overcome. Yeah, they can make the playoffs. I think they can even make a run in the playoffs. How far they go, who knows? I could give you a better thought late in March. But do you get what I'm saying here about, can he actually be blamed for losses with this roster this early in the season? There's a lot to figure out.
I mean, a lot of people will look at this roster and say, well, it's the same team as last year. Last year, they made a playoff run. 2 years ago, they were in the Western Conference Finals. The reality is it's a yes or no, right? Because Gabe Vincent does not look like the guy that a lot of Lakers fans thought he would be. He looks terrible. Vanderbilt will never be healthy, so you almost can't rely on him coming back. A lot of people are like, wait till Vando comes back. He'll be a lockdown defender. We can't guarantee that either of those actually happens. And then what do you do at backup center? Jackson Hayes might go to jail for the rest of his life for beating up his girlfriend. And then you have what? Christian Coloco as the backup center?
Yes.
That doesn't work at all. So, yes, there are very valid depth questions. Cam Reddish can't be counted on to be anything sort of good at all. I am very high on Dalton Connect. He had a bad night last night, but we'll give that to him. He's a rookie. I think that this team does have roster concerns. I think they'll make a bunch of trades. I wouldn't be surprised if this team looks so much different even before the trade deadline happens.
Yeah, the Lakers, I think the center position is where I was going to go next. I just think that Rob Pelinka did a horrible job, because with Anthony Davis, similar to Karl Anthony Towns, I think Anthony Davis and Towns are too good at playing the whole floor offensively to be the center. So the Knicks, you have Robinson coming back. So you're saying, okay, justified on Rose. Your starting center got hurt. He's a more true defensive rebounding center, whatever. With Pelinka, you couldn't rely on, like who were we relying on here to play with? I feel like it was just Anthony Davis to come in and be the center, because you go.
It's terrible. I mean, you have fans looking at the scrap heap, and I mean the absolute scrap heap. There's a guy, I don't know if you saw him in the preseason playing for the Mavericks, Jamarion Sharp. He's a 7'5" center. He's not great at all. But you have Knicks fans saying, get Pelinka on the phone. Jamarion Sharp is available. He's 7'5", and they're showing his highlights as if he's some superstar. This guy sucks, and you want him to be the center? Like, that's where the Lakers are at when it comes to the center position. And that's why I always said, you need a center. You need a center. You could have even signed Dwight Howard. I would have been fine with it. But you could not go into this season with Anthony Davis, especially if he's going to be the hub of the offense that JJ Redick says. You can't also make him the anchor of the defense. It's just no player can be that. And I think that was a huge mistake for Pelinka. As you said, no idea what he was thinking about.
Because you look through the roster and you just say there's no player here besides Anthony Davis that can be your starting center. But, look at what the Timberwolves did with Towns and Gobert.
Yeah.
Gobert, we'll all agree, is overrated. It's the most played out narrative, but it's one that we agree with.
Yeah.
But you got a center, a true center, to anchor your defense, to play down low, to rebound on offense, to be expected to do those things, which allows the power forward, Davis in this case, Towns in that case, to travel. And that made Karl Anthony Towns a way more impactful offensive player. So Anthony Davis, I think, needs the freedom to be the guy roaming sometimes, to be able to move wherever he wants on the floor, to create his shots, to create his spots, and maybe create some mismatches in the pick and roll game, pick and pop game. Anthony Davis is too great for him to be below the rim all the time. I need to be able to spread him out a little more. But with that being said, he's been phenomenal to start the year. He's been doing a good job in this role. He's been doing a great job in this role. I just think the Lakers could benefit more from having that center. But Davis, to start the year, 32 points, 11 rebounds, and a 1.7 blocks per game. This is a ridiculous start. He is forgotten about in how great he is, Gabe. He really is one of the league's top 10 players still.
I mean, he should have won a Defensive Player of the Year probably a couple years in a row, but they gave it to overrated Gobert. But that's whatever. They did that. I mean, right now he's looking like the MVP of the league. Anthony Davis, imagine. You know what? I have a great trade proposal. It'll work for the coast to coast vibe. Let's say Huck Porty ends up being a great backup center. Trade Mitch Robb to the Lakers. I don't know who the hell the Lakers are going to send back to the Knicks, but there you go. Then you solve both problems, and we move on. I mean,
Knicks will send Sims.
Yeah, I bet.
Pelinka will be happy.
And Pelinka will love it. He'll say, JJ Redick and his analytics can unlock Jericho Sims. Jericho Sims doesn't even know the playbook, and we're talking about him being unlocked, whatever. But you're 100% right about Anthony Davis. I mean, and we talk about his injury concerns. Last year before the season, I had a Zoda rant saying that Anthony Davis is not that injury prone that everyone thinks he is. But at the same time, the guy who has an injury history, you're going to force to be everything and anything on this team. It doesn't seem like it's the most sustainable strategy for the Lakers, and it's something that needs to be figured out, whether it's now through Jamarion Sharp or at the trade deadline to get somebody who actually is going to be impactful.
And the way Redick has started this season, he's giving everyone a pretty good shot here. Besides Bronny, everyone's playing 13 minutes or more a game on the roster. So everybody's getting a look. He's giving a fair chance here, but it also acknowledges that you have a coach who realizes he needs to find some extra players here. And if they're not on the roster, then they're not going to be found, in my opinion, with Rob Pelinka. Like, he doesn't give me the faith that in the middle of the season, he's going to pull off a move to get a quality center in, not even a top 10 center, but maybe a middle of the pack guy that can produce coming from a bad team. I don't have faith in Pelinka to do that. So Redick's really trying to find someone here, but I don't see it on the roster, man. And you said it about Hayes. The guy might be going to prison, so that's not going to help.
No, it's not going to help at all. Even though Jackson Hayes, you look at his numbers, it actually hasn't had a bad start to the year. So
no, he hasn't.
So that just, one of your decent rotational guys will be off behind bars. So that's good. Get me somebody who can actually play at that position, because then guess what? Then Anthony Davis gets to be unlocked even more. As you said, he can roam. JJ Redick wants him to shoot more threes. He can't shoot threes if he's buried in the paint. So this is definitely, once again, a new coach trying to figure things out. He's super analytics driven, so he's going to figure out some solution here. And finally, on JJ Redick, that it shows you how he's trying and what he's doing, that it's insanity that people are saying that as of today that he's still a bad hire. I'll take JJ Redick over Darvin Scam any day of my life.
I like the wild card nature of Redick. We don't know where it's going to go. I still don't love the actual hire, but I really Rivers. Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to the Bucks in a little bit. We will definitely get to the Bucks and Doc Rivers. Let's talk about coaching. Segue here into one of my favorite coaches in the league. I was so excited he got an opportunity, and it's worked out so great in Kenny Atkinson, man. The 9-0 start for the Cavaliers. I loved Atkinson with the Nets. We're going to discuss the Nets. I thought it was one of the major mistakes on what has been an otherwise solid tenure for Sean Marks. Getting rid of Kenny Atkinson was a crucial error in what the Nets were trying to do in their quest to win a title or even get deep into the postseason. And this Cavs team is really good. They have about 8 guys, maybe 10 guys on the team you feel pretty good about having on the court throughout the game. You have a good starting 5. I still think they're missing one guy when you look at that roster. Who is it? Doesn't even have to be a player better than Donovan Mitchell. That's not someone they're going to find. Doesn't have to be that, but they're missing like that microwave scorer, kind of electric scorer, 6th man or late in the rotation. But for a first 9 games of a season, forget that the record's great. This is a very, very good team with a very good coach. And you got to feel good about their chances of being a top 3 team at the East the entire way, just based on this start.
I mean, I fully agree with you with Kenny Atkinson. That was one of my. I wanted the Lakers to get Kenny Atkinson. You get a guy who now, especially with this Cavs team, who's already familiar with Karis LeVert and Jared Allen from the Nets days. That's a big bonus. So you have that familiarity. You have already a talented team with a bunch of chemistry. What Kenny Atkinson does great is he doesn't have his system. He has the system that pertains to his team. And that is the mark of a great coach. When you don't come in with any preconceived notions, you just see what you got, and then you work from there. That's what Kenny Atkinson does. He's a pretty good motivator and actually team guy, and he has that good mix of player coach and also schematics coach, which I love as well. This is a guy who gets his players. This is a guy who gets his team, and they fight for him. And they have shown that you get the chemistry with the team and you get some things moving. And guess what? You have a lot of good things happening. Another thing is also Donovan Mitchell. A lot of people throw out that Donovan Mitchell was maybe a self-centered guy, maybe a guy who wanted it for his own a little bit. But he has taken, at times, a step back to Darius Garland during games. There was an end of a game a couple nights ago where Darius Garland was just lighting it up. And where was Donovan Mitchell? Just throwing him the ball. He wasn't getting in the way. He ran to the corner and was absolutely chilling. I love what I've seen from that team, and that's from top down. That's Kenny Atkinson doing that to make that player and Donovan Mitchell not feel like he needs to do too much at the end of the game. You talked about, maybe the Cavs need one more player. There's no reason why Dean Wade. I don't mind Dean Wade, but there's no reason why Dean Wade should be probably as prominent as he is on this team.
Yeah.
If you get a guy that could maybe be in front for him, get somebody that could maybe supplement some of those minutes. He's playing 23 minutes right now. He shouldn't be. I think that's the spot that you're really looking for to replace somebody on this team. But I mean, I have no problem with what the Cavs are doing right now.
Through that rotation, you have up to really Isaac Okoro, which is 10 guys. When you have Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen, LeVert, Jerome, Merrill, Wade, Niang, Okoro, you have 10 guys there that you're okay with having on the court. Not many teams can say that, but there is, let's shed some of those bottom 3 guys minutes and maybe get, this is going to be a crazy one because he's a really good player and we're going to talk about it. And I'm not saying get him in a trade, but the perfect type of player for this team would be like a Cam Thomas, because they just need a guy that can totally go nuts for offensively for 60 minutes or for 48 minutes, 60 minutes. I'm in football mode. And be that microwave scorer. Now, obviously, Cam Thomas is a starting player. Cam Thomas is a top 2 offensive option and a good backcourt player. But that style of player off the bench, you're not going to find one of his ability unless you homegrow him. But that style of player off the bench is who they need. A guy who's a 12, 13 point per game guy over 28, 30 minutes. You can get rid of those minutes. I think that they can probably find somebody, especially, listen, man, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but if the Bucks and the Sixers, if one of those two teams stink at the deadline, there's going to be big selling going on in the Eastern Conference. And those teams have players. And listen, one of them probably will be 5 or 6 games under 500 at the deadline and have to start to think about selling. There will be big players at the deadline, and Cleveland is the team, because they have those 10 guys, that I'd like to see them shed some of their assets and really go in for it this year, because they can compete with Boston. Jared Allen is a great rim protector. I've always thought it. It's never been a secret. I'm, not coming up with some crazy take here. Jared Allen is great. Donovan Mitchell is great, just outside of those top 10 players in the league. Darius Garland is really good. That's one of the best backcourts. Gabe, how many backcourts in the league are better than this? Can you really think of one off the top of your head besides Boston? I'd go with that you feel excellent about saying they're better than Cleveland. You can't. It's just they're that good. So, yeah, Cleveland, this is legit. This is not just some flash in the pan start for them. This is a legit team, and the ensemble of players is really good. They've got 10 players playing 15 minutes a game that you feel good about. They've got 10 guys. They've got all 5 of their starters averaging over 13 or 14 a game right now. Cleveland feels good. Do you think they can make a run with Boston and whoever else shapes out to be the top teams in the East?
I don't know. Boston just they seem like they're just unstoppable. Like that's kind of where I feel with Boston, is because they have everything clicking, and there's no part of that unless, barring injury, God forbid, knocking on all the wood here. But I can't sit here and say that anybody is going to beat Boston, and even the Knicks, if they get things going. I can't see it right now. But you give me the Cavs to definitely make a run here. It's just a tough mismatch when we get granular about those teams, where the Cavs. I mean, can they do anything with KP? Can they do anything with Tatum? Those are the
too much to handle with the Celtics.
So probably not as of right now.
All right, let's move on here to the Nets. Eastern Conference surprise. I don't think the Cavs are as much of a surprise as the Nets are. The fact that this team is really competitive is a very surprising thing. But with that being said, they're 4-4. The Eastern Conference has had a real slow start here. So are the Nets a team that are definitely going to be in the playoffs? Are they definitely a team that's going to finish top 6? I can't get there, even close to there yet. But Gabe, you got to feel pretty good about this team.
They're probably the most exciting team going into this season that was supposed to be tanking. Every Nets fan that I knew, and they're not a lot of them, every Nets fan that I knew said, this is the Cooper Flag season. This is the year that they go and get Cooper Flag. I had a bunch of Nets fans. They were like, whenever they would lose, they were 1-3, but they would reverse the record and say we're 3-1 in the capture the flag kind of era. And now they've done much better since. And you have the highest scoring backcourt in the league with Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroeder. And that duo in of itself has been electric to watch. Cam Thomas has been much more efficient on the offensive end than anybody ever expected him to be this year. Nick Claxton still looks like a decent defensive anchor that you could have there that can guard on the perimeter, but also a nice protection at the rim. Look, this team, is it sustainable? Last year, they were in a similar spot around the playoffs and they fell off. This team will probably end up similarly to that team. But if you're looking for an exciting team to watch, I don't think there's any team more exciting in terms of expectation versus reality than the Brooklyn Nets right now.
And you look through the players on the team, this is what Sean Marks did before the Durant-Irving offseason. Yeah. And I always thought the crucial error that he made was the Harden trade, because that was just overkill. he's always supplemented the team with good role players. Cam Thomas is probably a number 3 as far as what number of, where do you want him to rank among your best players for a
Yeah.
contender? He's a
Yeah.
number 3, but there's a lot of teams in the league that don't have a number 5. Like, look at the Pistons. Look at these crappy teams that we thought the Nets were going to be with. The Nets have a foundation here. Now, you can get away with Cam Thomas being your second player. There's a chance, this is going to sound crazy, there's a chance by the end of the year, he's in like the top tier of scoring guards, like a maxi level of player.
Okay.
And I can see, I'm a big Cam Thomas guy. Big Cam Thomas guy. Schroeder's always been a good player. You know that. So that's a nice veteran guy to have on a team like this. Nick Claxton's very good. I'm just curious to see where this all goes because Sean Marks is going to have a chance to right his wrongs and put a star in any way, whether it's with all the draft capital they've acquired, whether it's with using that capital to make a trade instead of making picks. He has the opportunity now to put a player in this group and build a real authentic contender, not a big Band-Aid contender with all these stars. Keep the coach there who seems good so far and really make a run at it. But the Nets are in a spot now where you felt like maybe the Knicks were 4 years ago. And you said they just need that star or two.
Yeah.
The Knicks found it in Brunson. They now add Towns. We'll see if it works out. But the Nets have to be very careful with this group because it's a good one. Claxton, Thomas, this is a good foundation here. I'm forgetting names. Johnson, I think, is a good player, good, fifth or sixth guy in your rotation, maybe a great sixth man. But they have the guys here. Ben Simmons might not get many minutes the rest of the year. He's getting 24 right now. He's not that good. Now he's on the court. So this is different because now he's not good and he's on the court. In the past, he's just sucked because he's not on the court.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is the year that we finally shut the door on any Ben Simmons, unless we have already in the past?
Well, how bad do you think Ben Simmons actually is?
I think on a team like the Nets, he has no place because he's not a part of your future at all, and you're not contending for a championship. But the problem for me, I'd say a contender could use his services down the stretch in the year if he stays healthy. If he stays healthy, he shows that he can still play a little bit. I think a contender could use his services, but you can't afford the contract in a trade middle of the season. So that's where I'm at with Simmons, where it's he's just in a spot where he's not valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest part is that contract and how much money are you paying this guy versus what are you actually getting? Because if this was a guy that, let's say his name was, Will Smith, even though they win a lot of championships, but Will Smith, let's just say that, and he was giving you what Ben Simmons is giving you at his size, I think you'd take it as a rotational player, not that contract though, right? But you put on his number on that contract and you say, probably not worth it because right now he's averaging what, 6, and then another 6 as well. Yeah. That's not bad. I mean, yes, not. But for a guy that's not one of your top scoring options, that's not terrible. But you name him Ben Simmons, you give him all that money, and you just tell yourself, this is not the guy that we're trying to pay for. It'll be important for Sean Marks to try to get rid of that number, try to get rid of that contract. But I think right now, if we're just looking at play, I'm not too disappointed in what I'm getting from Ben Simmons compared to what I expect, because I expected nothing.
Yes, so that's fair.
Me getting 6 rebounds and 6 assists, I'm not too mad about that, to be honest with you.
He's also averaging 0.7 steals and 0.7 blocks per game, so there's a little bit of defense there. He was always a great defender in Philadelphia. That was one of his best traits. But, yeah, that's where I'm at with Simmons. He's not like a total scrub. We can't go there. Not this total scrub, but he doesn't have value within this Nets core for me to I just think even if he's playing well, he's eventually going to get shut down almost here. Remember, like Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier, I hate to keep going back to the Knicks, I'm sorry. But Evan Fournier was a veteran guy who, wasn't horrible, but wasn't very impactful either. He just did his job off the bench. And the Knicks basically were like, you're not a part of our future. We're just going to start playing players that are over you, even if they're not better than you. And that's where I think the Nets get with Simmons, is you're not going to be here. We're not really a finals contender, no matter what the 11 Nets fans think through the first 8 games. And we're just going to have to dump you. But the Nets, exciting start.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And not many people are in a position where Sean Marks, and if Sean Marks was in another team, I think he's already fired for that disaster.
Oh, yeah.
That disaster class that he did with that trade. Because, I mean, I remember I wrote an article the night that trade happened, and I said that was a terrible trade because you had Katie and Kyrie, and then you still had Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and the rest of the crew. You got rid of all of them and then supplemented that with James Harden, which ended up being a disaster. That's a fireable offense. Now he has an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I have the head coach that I like in Jordi Fernandez, like we liked with Kenny Atkinson. Now I have the role players. Jared Allen is now this, Nick Claxton is this team's version of Jared Allen. You can look at other players to say, hey, maybe that's Cam Thomas. Yeah. All you have to do now is do it the right way. He has the experience to do it the right way. And that makes you very excited if you were a Nets fan and say, hey, this guy learned from his mistakes. Now he has a second opportunity. Not many people have that opportunity, and he's going to make the most of it to make this team go well. You mentioned those draft picks, one of them being the Bucks pick. So if the Bucks continue to implode, then you have a pretty good draft pick no matter what with this Nets team next year.
The super team narrative that I just want to go through quick, that the reason that went so wrong for them was everyone was under the impression at that time that you just needed 3 players and some veterans around them to win a championship in the NBA. Because look at the teams that did it before. Golden State had their big 3. Miami and any LeBron team had their big 3. But you can't include Durant and Kyrie. You can't assume like that they're a LeBron impact. You just can't. They're not him. He's one of one. So if you don't have LeBron to build that team, tough to really get me convinced that they can win. Also, Golden State home grew those guys. And then Durant was a free agent signing. So they didn't give anything up. Giving up the assets for Harden was where Marks really botched that because – and you also had to give up assets to sign Durant. You had to trade D'Angelo Russell to sign Durant. It was a sign and trade. So that didn't work out for them. They gave up too much. Marks, you're right. He really blew that whole situation. And I wanted to say that. I was thinking about that before we started, and I forgot. You beat me to it. How does he even have a job still? And I think he's done a good job on 2 different occasions, but he did the worst job in NBA history in the middle of the 2 occasions.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he has a job. Well, you got to think about this before. The Nets, and we could say that he probably didn't learn from the previous regime's mistake when they did this nonsense with Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, Paul Pierce. You sacrificed all of your draft picks, and then you ended up being a garbage team because you made a stupid decision to try to buy some tickets for a new stadium. That's the reason why they got some guys so that they could fill some seats at Barclays to match around Darren Williams. And you thought, okay, maybe they're doing it different because they're getting better players than their prime, but it's the same mistake over and over. You have to think the dime stops now. And if you're Sean Marks, I know he's a smart guy. He's not going to let that happen again to him.
All right, let's go to a team that just absolutely sucks and might be a massive seller at the deadline is the Milwaukee Bucks. You mentioned Doc Rivers before, Gabe, so you were kind of chomping at the bit here on talking Bucks. I'll let you take it away with what is going on with this team.
I think Doc Rivers is one of the worst head coaches in the NBA. I thought he's been overrated. He was overrated when at the end of his Celtics tenure. I mean, that is a guy who rides off of the championship that he won in 2008 and is just going to be in the league for the rest of his life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy the pass he's gotten because of his ring, which is now 16 years ago.
It's 16 years ago, and the team that he had, you want to talk about super teams. Yeah. That team might have been better than some of these other super teams that we've talked about.
Probably were.
So, I mean, what are we doing here? The guy doesn't know what he's doing at this point of his coaching career. He doesn't understand the normal era of basketball. This is a guy who's failed. You had so much talent in LA. Are we going to forget about the Clippers stint? He had so much talent year after year. Lob City, you thought this team was a shoo-in for a couple titles, and they just flopped. And that's all on coaching. This is a team right now that isn't playing the proper brand of basketball. Right now, they have one of the lowest lowest assist rates in the league. You cannot be a winning basketball team in 2024, 2025 and have a trash assist rate. They're hoping on Giannis and Damian Lillard ISOs. It doesn't work at all. You need to be better on the defensive end. Right now, you're usually used to a Bucks team when they were winning their championships and going as far as they did, because they had good shooting with Budenholzer. Guess what they don't have right now? They don't have good shooting at all on this team. So you're relying on Damian Lillard, who doesn't even look good, to be honest. I know you see 27 points per game. It doesn't look good. And you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that's it with this team. They're not good, and Doc doesn't know how to get anything out of these guys.
The drop-off is nuts. First of all, if there's any Doc defense, it's that this roster sucks. This roster is awful. And it's probably the most shallow roster in the NBA because it is Giannis, 31 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, 6 assists a game, an MVP-type start on a 1-6 team.
Yeah.
And then Dame, you said it, it's a pretty empty 27 points a game. But then even if it's a good 27 points, the next best player on this basketball team is Bobby Portis because Middleton's not playing. And Middleton is not – I don't know if anybody else watched him last year. He's not great anymore.
No.
He's not this great number 2, number 3 option anymore. So when you're relying on Bobby Portis and Gary Trent Jr. to be impact players for you, you almost feel sympathy for Doc Rivers. And then you remembered what you said. He gets nothing out of his players to begin with.
No.
There is no good basketball being played in Milwaukee, and I don't care much when the rest of the roster is bad. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. Giannis alone, there should be better basketball being played here, and there's not. This is the team between Philadelphia and the teams that have struggled so far in the East. I'm just pulling up the standings quick. But this is the team between, when you consider Toronto, when you consider Orlando, and you consider Philadelphia and Milwaukee. I'm not saying Milwaukee will be the worst out of those 4, but those were 4 teams that we thought could maybe get into the playoffs. Philly and Milwaukee, of course, we thought they'd get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
But those are teams that have started slow in the East, been surprising slow starts for me. But, I mean, my God, Milwaukee's in the worst trouble. There is no light at the end of this tunnel, man.
And that's why you hear the reports that Giannis might be thinking that he might want to force his way out. And this was a desperation play to begin with for the Bucks to even get Damian Lillard, because I said this last year and I got clowned by it by Chris Mano. And I don't know if you had an opinion on it at that point, but I said what the Bucks are doing right now with Giannis is exactly what the Cavs did with LeBron in his first stint in Cleveland. They surrounded him with absolutely nobody, and they tried to get these desperation players like the Cavs did with Shaquille O'Neal and a couple, Antoine Jameson at the end of his career. Now the Bucks are doing it with Damian Lillard, who just isn't the same guy anymore. It's these desperation heaves to try to get him to stay. And guess what? If I'm Giannis, screw this loyalty. You got them a ring already. Do yourself a service and get out of that dysfunctional situation. I don't care where you go. This is not going to be good for your career because you're not going to win many games. If you want to win titles, take your brother Thanasis too and get to another team.
Yeah, this is a really horrible basketball team, and they have done him a disservice. Budenholzer should have never got fired. I think that had been, like a Giannis thing. I do think Giannis has more of that, and I know that you're going to disagree with this comparison, but like that LeBron style control and organization that, listen, with LeBron, if that's true, and I do believe it to an extent, the amount of power he has in an organization, I don't care. Everywhere he goes, he wins a title. He's the
Yeah.
all-time leading scorer. I don't care if he has a say.
Yeah.
With Giannis, I don't really care much that he has a say either after winning the title. He's the best player in franchise history, but he's had a lot of impact on negative things with this roster. And I really believe that.
Yeah. A lot of Big O fans will come at your neck.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Do you remember, you know what I was thinking about over the summer? Do you remember when KD left the Thunder?
Yeah.
And everyone at that point, everyone was like, "Oh, Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double the whole season. That'll never happen again." And then, like, the next 5 seasons, someone averaged a triple-double. Russ did it 2 years in a row. I think Harden do it?
It might have.
One of his MVP seasons, or he might have fell short on a rebound. And everyone said that about Oscar Robertson. And now there's a triple-double in a game every night.
Yeah. Every single night. You got Jokic with 6 already, and the rest of the league has 4. I mean, the Jokic is really the next triple-double king if we want to get there. But I mean, those narratives to me are so funny when you bring up a guy from like I was going to say the plumber era, but like the World War.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know. The World War eras of basketball. I mean, and they say, this will never get done. This will never get done. We don't even know that Wilt scored 100 points, buddy. Like, let's be real about this. We have one grainy radio call, and you're going to tell me that actually happened. I don't know if it actually happened 100%, but they always say, this will never get broken. This will never get broken. Well, guess what? Sports, it always evolves, and it always gets better. Just because you're a guy, and I don't even know, like Bob Pettit, like just because he did something in 1925 doesn't mean that it'll never happen again. I hate these stupid narratives, especially in a basketball league that is just objectively better. It's more athletic and just better. Anything can happen on any night.
Yeah, and that was my Oscar Robertson thought over the summer. But Bucks are in trouble. We'll move off of the Bucks here. They're in trouble though. We'll revisit them probably on a weekly basis.
You know, I saw an Oscar Robertson not highlight, but a shout last night because they were talking about guys who have averaged 25 points and over 9 assists in a single career, and it was 2 players. It was Oscar Robertson, and the next guy was Trae Young. And they were like, yeah, one of 2 players. And they're like, Oscar Robertson and Trae Young. I was like, never make that comparison ever. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know, then I don't know what's going on anymore.
That's a bad look for the Big O, too. You're dropping Trae Young comps who, Trae Young, good player, but come on. That shows you how different the game is. As you said, the way it's developed, the athletes, the scoring, everything involved, obviously the three-point line, the way the game has changed in just 50 years for the 70-year-olds who loved it when they were our age, it's just astronomical. I mean, those guys didn't even play the same sport as the guys today. But whatever. I want to just real quick, because we're talking about stat lines. You see Wemby has like a third of the 5x5s in NBA history already.
And are you surprised about it?
No, it's just I didn't realize there were so few.
Yeah,
because you would have thought maybe like once every 2 or 3 years a guy would have gotten one, but there's only been maybe 8.
I think Draymond has one. I think Draymond Green might have a 5x5.
Draymond almost had the quadruple double a few years ago too. That was a 5x5 game for sure.
And he didn't get it because of points, because he sucks at scoring the basketball.
5x5 club. Julius Erving did it twice. Oh, okay, so this is the stat. There's only like 7 players to have ever done it.
Okay,
but Hakeem Olajuwon did it 6 times. Andre Kirilenko did it 3 times.
AK-47.
Yusuf Nurkic did it in 2019. Anthony Davis has one, 2018. George Gervin, Julius Erving did it twice. Yeah, so that's what it was. There's been like 18 or 19 games, but only 7 or 8 guys have done it.
I mean, but that's still a fantastic stat line. I mean, the fact that Wembanyama, by the way, that team isn't good either. Prayers out to Greg Popovich. We didn't say that because I don't know. But
Spurs didn't get a spot on the rundown.
Spurs they're not good enough to get a spot on the rundown.
No.
You have to be pretty good or like terribly bad like the Bucks to get on the rundown.
Yeah.
And the Spurs just have Popovich in the hospital. That's not good enough. But Wembanyama is fantastic. Jeremy Sohan sucks. I love Wemby, man. I love Wemby. A lot of people, since we all know, well documented, big LeBron guy over here. Yeah. They're always like, when LeBron retires, are you gonna turn into an MJ fan and say that nobody could ever touch LeBron? I was like, bro, look at the league. You have so many great players.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even make a case for Luka Doncic at the same part of his career. He's averaging more points than LeBron did at this point of his career. You look at Wembanyama, who looks like if he stays healthy, which is still always going to be my biggest concern about that guy at that size, that guy could break every record in the book. They say the most unbreakable record is the Hakeem Olajuwon blocks record, right?
Yeah.
In what world can we say confidently that Wemby can't break that record?
No, absolutely. Absolutely right.
I fully believe that Wembanyama could break the blocks all-time record and become the all-time blocks leader in this league if he stays healthy. And that just shows you how incredible that is, because that record, no matter how many people you want to put next to, the greatest shot blockers in the league, Wembanyama is going to be right there, if not at the top of that list.
The only thing that I think could keep Wemby from it, and I totally agree with you. If you're going to sit here and say Wembanyama can't break that, you're just not watching him play. No. But the only reason that I think he might fall short is because over his career, he's going to play a lot less defense in the paint in man-to-man than Olajuwon did. But Wemby's so long that he blocks 3-point shooters.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, it's a very foolproof argument against him. This is a crazy stat line before we move on from Olajuwon. 1987, his first 5x5, 38 points, 17 rebounds, 6 assists, 12 blocks, 7 steals. That's like a one-man win that nobody else needed to play.
That's like the Walt, no, not the Walt, the Wilt Chamberlain picture that everybody puts.
Oh yeah. That's like 55 points, 39 rebounds, 180 blocks.
Yeah. That's what that was.
All right. We have a few more teams to get to here in our first episode of Coast to Coast. Thanks for sticking with us. Golden State, are they back here? 7-1 start, just beat the Celtics last night. No Klay Thompson, of course, this season. He's in Dallas. I think they did a pretty good job supplementing the roster and doing a little bit of a retool. I'd like to get your thoughts here.
Well, they did the greatest swap in NBA history that nobody thought could ever happen. Buddy Hield looks like Klay Thompson reincarnated right now, averaging 21 points, shooting 50% from behind the arc. You had a guy in Buddy Hield. He wasn't getting playoff rotational minutes in Philadelphia last year.
Yeah, and he should have been, because remember that one game he did and he just was on fire?
Yeah, but now you have him in Golden State. You get him in more off-the-ball actions. You're getting him off the screen. And he's been carrying this team at points when they didn't have Curry, because Curry hasn't played all 8 games this year. Mm-hmm. He's only played a couple of those games because of injury. And Buddy Hield has stepped up, and he looks like back to being that dominant shooter that he was in New Orleans, that he was in Sacramento, that a lot of people wrote him off for being. He's that guy again. And if you can get that for an extended period of time, there's no reason why this team, this Warriors team, I'm not going to say they're going to win a championship, but there's no reason why they can't make a sneaky run in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, the Warriors look good. Hield is in a spot now where, as a guy that's become just a pure flamethrower shooter, this is the best team to be, obviously, in Golden State, where you can learn from Curry, you can play in the offense and replace Klay Thompson's role. If there's anything I think Steve Kerr can coach, it's this off-ball movement to create shots for yourself behind the arc. Kerr was able to do it in his career. Obviously, every backcourt player he's had as a coach has been Hall of Fame level at it. So he's probably learned from Curry, Thompson, and Draymond about creating those shots. Coach learns from the players sometimes too. It's a great spot for Buddy Hield. You look at the roster, and on paper, you say not sustainable. I think that's where I'd go.
Yep.
But with an all-time great such as Curry, with another Hall of Famer in Draymond, with a Hall of Fame coach, I'm not going to rule them out. And we don't have to get into the Steve Kerr coach debate here because I think we both agree on where he stands. But the Warriors have a chance to make some noise in what I think people don't talk about this anymore because the Celtics are the best team in the league. Yeah. Western Conference is back, and the disparity among conferences, I think, is back in the NBA. Yeah. But the Warriors have a chance to be one of those teams that really shakes things up. But Gabe, look at this Western Conference, man. You got the Suns at 7-1, the Thunder at 7-1, the Warriors at 7-1, Dallas and Denver are 5-3. Houston's 5-3. Once again, don't think that's sustainable. Minnesota's going to take some time to gel. They're 4-3 right now. Grizzlies are 5-4. Lakers 4-4. Clippers 4-4. And then you get to that Spurs, Blazers, Pelicans, Jazz grouping. But those first 11 teams, you could see any of them as the final 8 left after the play-in.
Yeah.
So this is a great conference. A lot of great players.
I love the Western Conference. The Western Conference has been the gauntlet for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And the East has kind of been a one team wrecking crew. It's always that situation where you go, oh, whoever's in the Western Conference Finals or whoever makes the conference or the final out of the West, it's either a one or two thing. It's either they already played their hardest series in the Western Conference Finals, or they're so beaten and bruised from going through the gauntlet that is the West that it's hard to expect them to win the finals, especially now against the Boston Celtics that just seem like the juggernaut who's going to get a cakewalk series until they get to the NBA Finals. So there's always that up and down, but that's what makes basketball amazing. The playoffs, fine, I'm a LeBron fan. I enjoyed when the Cavs went to the finals against the Warriors every single year. But seeing those series, that's what makes basketball much more fun. It's what makes the show more fun as we get through it. And that's the stuff that makes me happy to be watching the Western Conference this year. Did you see what Steve Kerr wore for Halloween?
No, I didn't.
He dressed up as Kevin Huerter, and I think he looks the exact same as Kevin Huerter. They were talking to each other. There's a little clip that you can look it up.
Oh my
Kevin
God,
Huerter,
I'm looking at it right now.
Because they were playing the Kings on Halloween, and he looks exactly the same.
Wow.
As Kevin Huerter.
Dude, that is crazy.
Yes.
You think Kevin Huerter knew about that before?
No chance. No shot.
No way, right?
What's your reaction when you see Steve Kerr dressed as you for Halloween?
That's like, what? That is insane. Here, in case anyone else didn't see it.
It's the same person.
It's the same guy.
I think Steve Kerr looks like he could drop like 6 points a game.
There. Definitely does. Definitely does. You said it before the show. You never go 15 minutes in the NBA without news. And we do have some breaking news for the topic that we were going into next. That's the 76ers who have had a bad start. I apologize for not putting our topics up on the screen today. But Tyrese Maxey is expected to miss a couple of weeks because of a right hamstring injury.
Wow.
Full evaluation coming later, but sides are bracing for Maxey's absence. Sixers will take careful approach with the injury. That is the last thing they needed with everything going on with them right now.
I mean, they are the most injury-prone team in the world. You have Paul George, you have Embiid, who refuses to play games at some points, and now Tyrese Maxey, who is always the glue guy for this team, averaging 27 points per game this year. Now he's out, and you look at this roster, and you say to yourself, what in the world are they going to do? They're already 1-6. This could be catastrophic for this team if he has to miss a couple weeks because they could find themselves in a deep, deep hole here that ends up with them. Fine, they're probably going to make the playoffs, but it ends up ruining some very good chances that they have of getting a high playoff seed. It really does.
Now they feel like they're destined for their second year of best scenario as a play-in.
Yeah.
And then we saw with the Knicks last year how much home court advantage helped the team playing the Sixers. How, I felt like the Sixers last year with Nick Nurse were at a point in the playoffs where they still never gelled.
Yeah.
They never, because they were playing such great basketball, and then Embiid gets hurt, and it kind of stunts the development of the team, and now they're going to be in a position, this very small scale, because the names aren't as big, the players aren't really in their ultimate primes, but this could be a Durant, Irving, Harden situation where how many games do you actually get George, Embiid, and Maxey on the court together throughout this season? That's how it feels now with the Maxey injury. Embiid missing the games, now suspended. That was a crazy situation in the locker room. I don't know if I've ever seen a situation like that.
No.
And we don't even have to go down that rabbit hole of it, but Embiid suspended for it. And it's just a disaster start for Philadelphia because you do look at that Eastern Conference. And while it's not great, I don't know if you can afford like a 2-10, 2-11 start to the year, because that is if you're 8 or 9 games under 500 at any point in the season, that's a massive hole to climb out of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you look at the rest of the teams there. I don't expect the Magic to really fall too far under 500. No. I don't know if I expect it from Charlotte this year. Chicago is going to be a competitive team. They're not a free win by any means. Miami will stay around 500. And then those top 6 teams, the Knicks, Hawks, Nets, Pacers, Celtics, Cavs, are all going to stay at least 500 or better.
And this is a situation here with the 76ers that is, you are in dire danger. This is like, this is DEFCON 5 for the 76ers right now, because that, once again, we keep repeating the exact same thing. Tyrese Maxey was the real star of this team. He was the guy that everybody was getting into the seats for. Yep. And look, even in the season, they lost to the Bucks. They lost to the Pistons this season. Like, they aren't playing good basketball to begin with, and that's with a guy averaging 27 points per game. Paul George looks nowhere near where he should be, and now you have a stretch. I mean, let's say you'll miss a couple of weeks. You're playing some pretty tough teams these next couple of weeks, and it's not going to be good. And hamstrings especially. They say a couple of weeks, but you and I both know that hamstrings are one of the worst things that you could have because they linger forever. So they are really going. They say they're going to be careful. This guy might miss a month and a half at even as
especially the way he plays. He's such an explosive guard.
Yeah,
you don't want those lower body muscle injuries early in a season. You'd rather them late in a year because you can at least get 2 or 3 or 4 months of health. Hopefully, your team's 10 games over 500, and you can sit here and just say, "All right, I'm going to take 2 weeks off and really get this thing right." But now, by the time Maxey comes back, this team could be, I mean, am I just being hyperbolic here if I say they could be 10 or 15 games under 500?
No, I don't.
3 weeks or 4 weeks? They stink. They're terrible. Like, Andre Drummond is playing 30 minutes a game.
Yeah. No, they could easily drop. They could go like 5-15. Like, that's a very expected record at this rate. This team isn't good. They don't have the talent that everyone thought that they have. I had a lot when I was talking about early in the offseason on Playbook. I was talking about how the Knicks were going to be this great team, and all these Philly fans were yelling at me saying, "Oh, Paul George and Maxey is going to be this crazy duo." Well, Paul George doesn't look good at all. He's not the defender he once was. He doesn't score like he once was. And now the only guy that gave you life is injured. Like, good luck. Good luck. This is not a good team.
Because Embiid obviously can come back and win games for them, but how often will he play? Let's look at the team right now without Embiid and now without Maxey. Moving forward the next couple of games, Kelly Oubre Jr. is probably your best player. That's the worst team in the NBA. Do I have to read another name?
I don't think so. I think you nailed it right there.
Caleb Martin has not been very good for them. Andre Drummond is your starting center. I know he still gets rebounds, but come on, it's terrible. Guerschon Yabusele, who was supposed to just be like an 8th man, and you hope you get something out of him, is playing 20 minutes a game now. And now he's going to get more with Maxey out. And then you're like, look at the team, dude. It's the oldest team in the NBA, too. Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Kyle Lowry. These guys are playing 20-plus minutes a game. And you're expecting impact. And then Paul George is what, 34 now? So this is an old team. This is a team with nothing going on. They need something from Jared McCain, the rookie, because he hasn't really done anything yet, 6 points a game. But that's where you look for a guy that could actually get better throughout the year. Lowry, Drummond, Gordon, Yabusele, these guys aren't getting better throughout the year.
No. And even with Jared McCain, he was supposed to be like a catch and shoot guy to start his career in the NBA because, I mean, in Duke, he was a lights out shooter. So why not have him play a secondary role to be that? Now he has to play much more on ball. You have to force guys like Reggie Jackson to play more minutes. This is a dumpster fire in Philadelphia. And even though you and I probably are both very happy that this is happening, it sucks the way in that it's happening. And it does not look good for the 76ers.
I mean, what is their starting rotation now? It's without Maxey, without Embiid. It's probably Lowry's the point guard.
Lowry's the starter. So you have Lowry, Oubre, Paul
George, and then Caleb Martin and Andre Drummond.
That's your starting five.
That's the worst starting five in the NBA.
Yeah. With Eric Gordon being your sixth man.
Eric Gordon's your sixth man. What a disgraceful team here. Losing, obviously, didn't plan on losing Maxey and Embiid, who's an MVP center, but
let's be honest here. How good was this team if Maxey's still not hurt? Because
not very good, no.
I mean, you are trusting once again guys like Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon. I mean, when those signings happened, a lot of Philly fans were because they see the names, they're like, wow, we got these really good players. They're not that good anymore.
Yeah, it's not 2017, man.
No, this isn't the Eric Gordon that's dunking in Los Angeles with the Clippers or is hitting logo threes on the Rockets. This is an Eric Gordon that he's just going to get you a couple of threes a game and that's it. Kyle Lowry, I mean, he's just good for getting a charge a game. Like, what are you expecting from him? Like, this is, I don't know. Maybe it's a deeper issue that's really unraveling here with the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, the injuries aren't great, but this team just probably wasn't built well to begin with.
No, this team is not built well because if those are your supplementary role players, the age of the players, the production of the players, the speed of the players, the athleticism, every single thing that goes into Kyle Lowry, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon as three real key. I like the Drummond signing because the Sixers never have a true backup center, ever. Yeah. It just seems to be something they always omit with Embiid. But I don't like Drummond being the only center available to replace Embiid. You needed to get a second guy, a younger guy, that could come in and give you minutes. They don't have that. It's all on Drummond right now. Yeah, oh my God. Is he even on the team anymore?
I don't think so.
Where is he?
I don't think B-Ball Paul is on the roster, man.
He's not. He's not. B-Ball Paul. I forget.
They have this guy, Adem Bona.
Yeah.
6'10" from UCLA, 21-year-old kid. I'm sure this guy is going to get an uptick of minutes here.
No surprise here. B-Ball Paul is on the Pistons.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's in heaven right there.
Yeah.
All right. I'm good to wrap here now that we're talking about B-Ball Paul. I think that's a good sign to sign off. Anything around the league for you?
Nothing. We did a really good job wrapping around the league. I mean, I guess we could just say as a closing statement, in Minnesota, you said that they have to gel. I think at the end of the day, we will all say it's a win-win trade for both teams. That's what my take was before it. But now you're seeing the stats for both players on both teams. And you can just say, fine, maybe Cat was a leg up on the offensive side. But I'll take, if I'm a Minnesota fan, I'll take what Randall's given me on that end. And it doesn't clog up maybe as much as people thought it would.
I think by the end of the season, end of regular season, both fan bases are going to be pretty pleased with how they did in that specific trade. I don't know how great the teams will be. I think Minnesota's going to be very, very good no matter what. But the Knicks, we'll see with the Bridges situation. I think both fan bases will be pleased with that trade, though, by the end of the year, because this is something we didn't talk about because we didn't talk about the trade. It's so far in the past now. But it's possible Dante DiVincenzo capped last season. That might have been his total ceiling. And I love the guy. I think he's a great player and a great energizer. But we'll see how it works out. I think it's a good move for Minnesota and a good move for the Knicks as well. So the fans will be happy by the end of the season.
I will say Dante DiVincenzo benefited for being on the Knicks because guess what? He was that guy that he came off the bench and everyone was like, oh, here we go, Dante. He hits a three and it's like a Make-A-Wish kid gets a point. The whole thing is, I'm not calling Make-A-Wish kid, but the whole arena erupted, right? In Minnesota, It's not Dante DiVincenzo. It's Naz Reid that gets that treatment, that bench hero treatment. And Dante, when he gets a bucket, everyone's like, oh, nice, Dante. It's not the same hype in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not that same role player in Minnesota. And I think that affects him a lot in terms of mojo, rhythm, and kind of that path.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll wrap it there. Coast to Coast, BTO Media, every Thursday morning, hopefully, depending on the schedules. Should be every Thursday morning, though. Make sure to check out the playbook. Make sure to check out the hard line. You can wrap up our episode of the Burrows to end the season is still very relevant. The final Burrows episode from last week. So that will be a more sporadic show throughout the baseball offseason. Big news. We'll jump on for a half hour and talk about it. We'll be back next week, same time. Gabe and myself, Thursday, 11 o'clock. Make sure you're there. And if anything changes, we'll always announce it on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.